Hi, hey, we're back.
Hey, back and better.
And we've got a local legend, the Ronnie Wolford. There's been excited about this, Ronnie Wolford.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
They are. I sent out a group text to some guys. They're excited about this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So we're going to talk about, with your permission, we are going to talk about what it was like back in the 60s going to Vietnam.
Where do you want to start?
Well, so what year did you go?
68.
Wait, so you graduated from high school in 1968?
Graduated in May and hit Paris Island in June, 1st of June.
Where's Paris Island?
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Training.
Marines.
Merchant Marines. So tell me, so you come out of Jackson High School, and you told me the guidance counselor said, Roddy, your grades, what'd they tell you?
The guidance counselor, your dad I'm sure he remembered him, was Copley.
Oh, yeah, Willard Copley.
Willard
I've heard that
Copley.
name.
Yeah, talking that mic.
And I think that he was a major in the Marine Reserves
Okay.
because he wore a uniform to school sometimes.
Okay.
And I think it was a major. And I went in to see him about going to college, man. Everybody else going to college, I thought, well, hell, I'd go.
Yeah.
And,
What'd you want to be?
well, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And he said, your options are limited. He said, did throw it, I might end up in jail, and or I could go in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And I opted for the Marine Corps.
They was drafting in, wasn't they?
They were drafting, and got a little bit of a story on that. I had enlisted. There was 5 of us from Jackson that had enlisted on the buddy plan. Well, that buddy plan was only to Ashland, Kentucky. And
What was the buddy plan? I never
well,
heard.
it was a program where supposedly you got to spend your time together in the Marine Corps.
Oh, the 2 years?
Well, whatever.
Okay.
And but like I say, there was 5 of us, and but they put us on a bus, and we went to Ashland, Kentucky for the induction into the Marine Corps. And we got there, and they had us lined up, and since we had already, the 5 of us had enlisted, they just came down the line with a black marker, and were putting marks on all these guys' chest, and they couldn't, none of us could figure out what it was for. Well,
You're standing there shirtless.
they had drafted everybody, but at that time, instead of just drafting them into the Army, they drafted them into the Marine Corps. And hell, them guys were crying and going on and begging them not to put them in the Marines. But
So you're standing there in Ashland, Kentucky, shirtless, and they're just coming by marking you.
naked.
Naked, butt naked.
Naked. Yeah. They put a big mark on you.
I mean, what's going through your mind at this point? I mean,
Well, we had to take a Pledge of Allegiance and everything naked.
really?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine them doing that to you now? Do they still do that to you now?
Well, you should have saw the physicals. They were something
Really?
to behold naked.
Well, we had to take naked physicals for sports, but I'm sure the Merchant Marines was a little different.
Well, they made you touch, get real close.
Really?
Yeah. But anyway, we rolled in, we were quite apprehensive about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we flew, it was in the night, and they flew us out of Huntington to, we ended up at Paris Island in the middle of the night. And from the time they got you off the bus, you went in and they took clippers and shaved your head and was real mean to you.
Uh-huh.
And you had to stand on these yellow footprints, everything you did there. And But after a period of time, you got out of there, and
What are they training you there to do?
well, that was all your training, all your basic
your fitness.
training. Paris Island, you went through in the Marine Corps rules and bylaws. You went through the rifle range, did your rifle training, and your your PT.
Physical training.
Yeah, and that was rough.
You remember what that was like?
Well, it was 2 weeks, and you did 3 miles before breakfast, and they had giant mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Some what they called sand fleas. You could hear them coming in, and they would sound like a helicopter, and they would buzz you before they took a bite.
Really?
Yeah.
And you wasn't allowed to kill one.
You just had to let them sit there and suck on you.
Yeah.
Like a horsefly.
Stand there at attention and let them do that. And but we moved on from that, and then went to North Carolina.
Okay.
For the you had about 9 weeks of training, and they put me in mortar training.
What would that be?
Well, your mortar training was just a 81 millimeter mortar, and it had a crew of like 5 people.
So explain to me what. Okay, I don't know what a
A mortar. Well, the 81 millimeter was the circumference of the
Of
round.
a shell, like a
Okay,
shell.
so you'd be dropping
Dropping
it.
it into
dropping it in,
Okay.
and what have you. So we trained on that.
What are you training on that? Like the distances and the.
Well, you had charts to read, and train you not to kill all your buddies.
Yeah, how much? So in the bottom of those things, are you putting like powder in those? Is that how you're?
No, they had on the bottom of the rounds. They had pardon me. They had nitroglycerin packets, and you had a chart you read, and it would tell you how many packets to use to get a certain elevation and distance.
Wow.
And you would just, whatever the chart read.
So whenever they'd give you those coordinates like that, would they give you those in latitude and longitude, or would they give you those like, would they say, like if you had to hit a target 300 yards in this direction, how would you read that?
Well, they would give you a compass reading, and you set your direction on your compass reading, and then set your elevation on the tube, along with
That's how to get there.
how much nitroglycerin packets to use to get it there. And you could get it within 5 or 10 yards
Wow.
if you were good.
Yeah. So you learned that for 9 weeks.
I was naked.
Yeah. You did. I feel like you were naked the entire time.
They never gave the man a uniform.
Yeah, you were naked the entire time. Yeah, no, Ron. Chubby's, hey, we all know this guy. All the folks over at AP Prep, we cannot thank you enough. Look those guys up at apprep.info. We get asked all the time, hey, what happens? How do you get over there? Hey, that's how you do it. You get on apprep.info, you look them up, you set a time for your kid's assessment. They schedule a time, you bring your kid over there, boom, it's done. They get you right in the schedule. And hey, for all you adults, you just show up on Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday night at 5:30, and they got their boxing classes. It's $10, or you can join by the month. So look them up at apprep.info. So you're in North Carolina for 9 weeks, and where you go?
Well, after that, we came home for I think it was a 15-day leave, and then went to Camp Pendleton, California.
Okay.
And out there, they had a Vietnamese village set up. And they would train you there and give you different types of situations and what have you do for a few weeks. They call that staging. And that's where they would put together a group of soldiers so that they'd have a plane load, leaving. And then from there, they'd fly you to Da Nang,
Vietnam.
South Vietnam.
So whenever you landed, are you landed in a hot zone, or you landed on a base, or whenever you leave the United States soil, what's going through your mind?
Oh, well, you can't breathe.
You remember that?
Can't breathe half the time, but
you remember leaving? You remember?
Oh yeah, you remember it all.
Yeah.
When you get old, you can remember all that, but you can't remember where you went to the bathroom now.
Yeah.
Now, Ron, though, when you were headed over there, like, did the Marines have you fired up? Like, I mean, were you ready? Like, did you feel like, hey, I'm ready, let's go, let's do this?
Well, we'd had our training, and they put you in a frame of mind that you can do anything, I suppose.
Why did you think you were going? Like,
why did I think I was going?
Why did they tell you that you were going back then? I mean, I wasn't around.
Well, once they drafted you, your options were limited. You went where they told you to go.
Yeah.
And
but why did you think the war was going on? Like, as a 18-year-old,
going back to that time, communications here at home wasn't what they were,
you're as good as
they are now.
You were as good as Walter Cronkite.
We didn't. We didn't know anything. Still don't.
You still don't know why you thought that, do you?
No, not to get into that the political end of it or whatever.
Yeah.
Went with all that. And I've never asked myself why.
Yeah.
I had thoughts about it, but
sure. So you leave the soil though in California, and you're how old at this time? You're 19 probably.
No, I was 18.
Still 18, and
I had just turned 18 in May, and got to Vietnam the December of the same year.
You remember December of the same year.
Yeah, it was the 5th day.
December the 5th. So whenever you pull out of there, what time of day was it whenever you left?
Gosh, I don't know that.
Probably a long flight, wasn't it?
Well, they put us on a bus and took us to Treasure Island, it seems like, and got on a flight, and we flew into Hawaii, and they refueled in Hawaii, and then flew on to...
Didn't even get off the plane.
No.
Yeah.
No, we didn't get off the plane. And then we flew from there to Okinawa. And in Okinawa, we stayed there, I don't know, probably a week before we got assigned to different units.
That's on a base in Okinawa?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a safe zone.
Well, Okinawa at that time was a United States
ally
territory.
Okay.
And had a big air base there. I think might have been called Kadena Air Base, but they flew B-52s out of there, and it was something just to see a B-52 go down the runway, because the wings were so long that they actually touched the ground. They had a little wheel on them.
Yeah.
Out on the end of the wing until they got up enough speed. It was so big, they were enormous.
Yeah.
And we would watch them and whatever. And of course, during all the confusion, they lost all the payroll records. Nobody had any money. Everybody smoked cigarettes back then. Nobody could buy a pack of cigarettes.
What do you mean confusion?
For days.
Oh, just the transport.
Your records would always get lost.
Yeah.
and along with your medical and your payroll together.
So you're sitting there with nothing to do, no money.
Nothing to do, no money. All you do is sit in the shade.
Yeah.
And
is that what you did? You just sat in the shade in Okinawa for a week.
Sat in the shade for a week.
Yeah.
And then they get you in your platoons or whatever. Or?
Well, then you got assigned. The people that I went over with, it was not a platoon of soldiers that I had trained with. It was just mixed from everywhere. And at that time, I probably didn't know one other guy on the plane. But my orders were for the 9th Marine Amphibious Brigade.
9th Marine Amphibious Brigade.
It was called 9th MAB.
Okay.
And it was a amphibious.
Water.
Meaning that our headquarters were aboard ship. So once they flew us from Okinawa into Da Nang, we stayed there like overnight, and the next day they took us and flew us out to the ships on a helicopter. And then a couple more days there getting situated, and then from then on it was just part of what was going on.
Go time.
Go time.
So whenever you get into your platoon, you get settled in, I'm sure. How's that life like? Whenever do you have a bunk? I mean, I've always wondered that, like whenever you see these, and I don't mean to compare it to a movie, but that's all I have to compare it to. I didn't live it. So did you have a place to like come back to and sleep? Like, did you have a bunk? Did you have a bed? I mean, you're on a ship?
Well, they had a fleet of ships, so they would have a fleet would have a battalion, and a battalion would consist of like 3 companies plus a weapons company.
What's a company? I guess I don't even know what a
company would probably be around 220 men.
Okay. What does it stand for?
It was just like communication type things. Like once I got into my company, I was with Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 26th Marines.
Okay.
And that would be that was your mailing address, and that was your home address.
Okay.
And but they would have you on different ships. They had so many ships in the fleet, so because of the bunks and the cafeterias and what have you, and then the crews for the ships, they would break you down into smaller numbers.
Yeah.
And they put me with the weapons platoon.
Okay.
Which was machine guns and your mortars and a lot of supply work and stuff with the company.
Okay.
And but then if where we were an amphibious brigade, they would if somebody got hit, Army or Marines, if they got hit and their compound was being overrun or something, we had helicopters there on the ships, and they would fire the helicopters up, and they would fly us in to the hot LZs, and we would take care of whatever needed taken care of.
Were you coming in like a support role or something, or?
More or less as a support role, because we were as needed.
Okay.
Like if somebody got hit, Now, this was originally when I got there.
Okay.
Like I say, if somebody got hit, they would send us in
There's a firefight,
to do the cleanup.
and they say we're overran. They've got us. Bring in these at these coordinates.
And we would pull a John Wayne and
Yeah.
and go in, you know, and
Yeah.
they would land as close as they could, and then we would just go in whether it was day or night. And
Whenever you say we, how many would that be? 5, whatever, 6?
well, the old helicopters we had, the Army knew the Hueys and the Army Slicks and everything, but the Marines had the old egg beaters, CH-34 helicopters, and they had a long tail, just 2 wheels up front and a long tail that almost sit on the ground. But they would only haul 5 Marines plus their own crew, which consisted of about 4, pilot and a co-pilot and 2 machine gunners. And just to go off bounds a little bit, when you got in one of those things, and if you were going into a hot LZ, bullets are flying everywhere, tracers are flying everywhere. People think they've always been able to pray. You couldn't pray, you couldn't even breathe.
Yeah.
You were so scared and
Stopped up, just stopped.
and what have you, and I mean, and that thing is shaking, and them are telling you the crew are telling you to sit on your helmets so you didn't get shot in the butt.
Yeah.
But it was, for a kid from southeastern Ohio, it was quite an ordeal.
Do you remember the first hot LZ that you went into?
Yeah.
Hey, Chubbies, how many points do you have on the McDonald's app? We all know and love the McDonald's app, and we want to thank Brad and Sarah Munn for being a great sponsor of our show and of our communities here in Jackson, Oak Hill, Wellston, and MacArthur. McDonald's, check them out. I mean, were you kind of like, wow, we're not in Kansas anymore? I mean, this is...
Well, and not the first one, but the second one we went on, I had to carry the mortar tube, and it weighed 50-some pounds, and the helicopters would come in, and they wouldn't land.
They'd hover.
They would come down and hover, and if they were over a rice paddy, in the second operation we went on, they just come in and hovered, and I figured it was about 10 foot to the ground, and it was on a rice paddy, and all you could see was water, and when we jumped in, we went in chest deep in the mud, and bullets are flying, and I didn't know what to think.
You got a 50-pound tube. But
I was hollering, help me. And
What did you do?
well, somebody come and help pull me out of the mud and get to.
And they're shooting at you.
Oh yeah, the bullets flying, every which direction in a firefight, and mortar rounds, and you really expected to get killed. You
Yeah.
didn't. That was your expectations for the end, because you didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't think there was any way that you would come out of that.
How often was this happening that you'd get the call that you'd have to go out and go land in a hot LZ? I mean, you know,
We probably did about 20 operations. An operation could be anywhere from 3 or 4 days to 2 weeks. I think the longest operation I was on was 30 days. Then we'd go back to the ship for maybe 2 days and get called out again. But the true heroes were the helicopter pilots. I mean, for us they were, because they were what got us from point A to point B.
yeah.
If we had any downtime, it was because of them. And We have several guys here in Jackson that was helicopter pilots.
Really?
The helicopter pilots in Vietnam were not officers. Officers were all college educated. And they took in the early stages, in the late 60s, now I'm not sure of this, but they were taking people that they thought would make good helicopter pilots, and they would promote them, I think, to E6s, which was a staff sergeant, and then they would go into a warrant officer program.
Okay.
And but those guys were heroes. They loved it.
Yeah.
They were like some of those movies you saw.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was a very dangerous job
yeah,
too, wasn't
absolutely.
it? I mean,
Absolutely.
When you're out there for 30 days, so are you you probably have to move during that? I mean,
we moved every day. We'd set in at night most of the time.
So what would be your contact? Like, how would you contact back and forth to say, here, come get us? I mean, were you ever like worried? I mean,
the lower level that I was on, I didn't deal with any of that.
Were you ever worried that you were like going to get stranded there? Or?
No.
Huh.
So, like, when you guys would you move to like another like forward base or something that was there to sleep, or would you be sleeping in the bush? Or I mean,
well, for an example, one night we were in the Mekong Delta area, and that area was a lowland right beside the inlet from the ocean. And we were tired and had been out in the bush for a while. And we thought, man, all this grass to lay down in and get a good night's sleep. And so we didn't really prepare all that much. And one guy rolled over and threw his arm out and could feel the water. And the tide would come up. You were so close to the ocean that the tide would regulate the water level in that area. And so instead of sleeping, we had to find a tree line that we could get up in and stand there or sit there if we could sit down between the bamboo until daylight. But you had mentioned, how did we move? We walked and carried all of our gear, and you usually carried enough food for, if you could carry that much, you'd carry it for like 3 days, and that'd be 12 meals. And after I was there a while, I might have 8 canteens, carry 8 canteens, because there wasn't any place to get water. And our water, the water was so bad, and you used those, they called them halazone tablets,
Yeah.
to purify the water. And we would take Kool-Aid and pour in our canteens, and
Just to
change the taste.
Just try to get you something, yeah.
And it'd be like pouring Gatorade in different things nowadays to change the taste. But that was daily life.
Then where would you go to, like, okay, so you've been out 3 days and you're running out of food. Where do you get more of that?
Well, they would resupply us if the weather permitted. There was one time, and one occurrence where that they couldn't get the helicopters in the air because of the weather, and I think it was like 5 days we had no food or no water, and we got really mean.
Yeah, I would say.
But I had a little bit of a different, I'd grew up was a garden and eating different things. Well, the Vietnamese people that lived in that area would plant sweet potatoes. And, of course, it was, ideal situation for crops.
Yeah.
And so I would just dig and eat the raw sweet potatoes.
You just go to somebody's garden.
Well, you could, everything was almost a garden.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the terrain like over there?
Probably the most beautiful country I ever saw.
Was it?
Yeah. Other than the bomb craters, there was bomb craters everywhere and booby traps, and but just the terrain, it was mountainous, but then it had the valleys and the ocean. You was always near an ocean. You could almost always see the ocean.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I think at its widest point up around Da Nang, that it may have been about 12 miles wide, the country.
Huh.
Oh, so it's not very wide.
No, in certain places it wasn't, and of course it was.
Now, did you spend most of your tour, in the jungle and that kind of stuff, or did you get some urban work as well?
In the latter half, we didn't really get urban work, but we had got hit pretty bad, and they had made a lot of changes in the upper military grouping, and took us from one Marine division, reattached us to another one. So they gave us some other duties, like while they were rebuilding the company and getting reinforcements into the company, we would do things like guard a bridge or a mountain pass on Highway 1. They only have one highway.
Okay.
And that was their main supply route for us. And I say guard the highway on the mountain pass. It was really a steep mountain, and there was a I probably shouldn't say that. There was a restaurant at the top of the mountain, and you could actually trade a case of sea rations for companionship.
Oh, okay.
And so being Marines, as we were, and the Army was doing all the convoys of supplies. So the Army would come through and come up this mountain, and their trucks would have to go so slow, the convoy would. So, and the Army guys knew we were doing it. We would jump on the trucks and start throwing off cases of sea rations. And some of them got ate and some of them got traded.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You had to make do.
Well, yeah. Desperate times call for desperate
survivors.
measures.
Yeah. And you had some good times, and the camaraderie between the men were. It was kind of different because you were so close. You were like brothers.
Yeah.
But then again, if somebody left or got shot or killed, it was just a fleeting moment for you. It wasn't something that you remembered it and talked about it, but it wasn't, the grief of a brother.
Was it because it was so common, do you think? And I mean,
yes, and you depended on each other, but you knew not to get too close. Anybody could be gone at any time. But I was very fortunate. I spent all my time in the Marine Corps, 4 years, with a young man out of Pennsylvania. He and I were stationed everywhere together for 4 years. And then I had a good friend out of North Carolina
Yeah.
I was stationed with. And
You recently, not recently, but he recently passed away, didn't he?
passed away from COVID.
Yep. But you guys reconnected after all these years, didn't you? Or did
We
you always?
We started reconnecting in like 1980.
Okay.
And our kids were during the young years, and we did the beach 2 or 3 times a year, and maybe 6 or 8 times a year got together.
Yeah.
For all those years.
Oh, man, that's cool.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's got to bring you closer to people than, I mean, any other experience that you could go through.
you'd have to trust those people more than you would trust most.
Well, the bond you formed with people, each person knew what you had went through.
Yeah.
Your friends or you were going through it together. So, it wasn't, you didn't need spoken words to realize what was going on or where somebody's mind was at the time.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and it was probably comforting to see those guys, like, once you guys all got back. I mean,
well, we got
very
drunk.
few people. But very few people probably understood what you guys had been through. Yeah. I mean, you can explain it, but it's,
Yeah. Well, we got drunk a lot.
Yeah.
Got in trouble. Got naked.
You're still naked.
Hell, he still aren't wearing clothes.
I got to knock twice before I ever go over to his house. I just never know. Ronnie loves naked time.
Yeah, his uniform is naked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so have you been back to Vietnam?
I thought I would like to go back, but I had they had a traveling wall that went through Hillsboro once. And I went to it, and I didn't have a real good reaction to it. So I don't know whether I would want to go back or not. I've looked at pictures on the interweb.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Oh, you're savvier, you let on. Yeah. He's about half Bill Gates.
Yeah.
And saw places that I had actually been, and of course,
They changed now.
well, the United States had made Vietnam a favored trade partner, and that put all the money back into that country, and it, a big thriving country now.
Yeah.
And even though it's communist now.
What does that really mean? I guess I don't.
Well, they have a dictator that runs the country as opposed to elections. There's no elections, just
They have a
passed on
boss.
from one commie to the next one.
Yeah.
And
What's the name of that leader?
but gosh, I don't know. Ho Chi Minh was
That was the guy then. Yeah, I remember that.
Uncle Ho, they called him. He was like a peasant that led the rebellion,
Really?
and then he ruled the country prior to dying. And I don't know who runs the country now.
So would the people of Vietnam, like when you would go in, I've never been there, but so would there be like villages?
There was villages.
Or were there cities?
No, there was cities
Like
and
with
villages.
electric and sewer?
Yeah. Now they had that in the bigger areas as a capital and
Concrete and a whole bit.
Yeah.
I mean, they had it all.
they had hotels.
And you went to those
everything.
places?
No,
You could you have went to those places?
no,
The United States was not welcome in those places.
we were bush Marines.
You guys were out in the jungle. Those the
We
rice
stayed in
paddies.
the bush.
Yeah.
So how far away from those cities were you? Like 500 miles? I mean, was this like in conjunction like Columbus? Would you have been fighting 3 miles off of 270? Like if you were looking at it comparable speaking wise,
Well, no, because they only had like the one highway run through the country, and the jungle was so thick there that hell, you didn't know if you were 100 yards from anything.
Is it that thick?
But we were in be about like comparable to being out in the desert.
Okay.
And you didn't know how many miles. We as Marines didn't know anything.
Yeah.
We knew what they wanted us to know.
Would you just be walking and all of a sudden pop up in somebody's backyard, or would you just be walking and all of a sudden pop up in a village?
Well, we would be in the villages, but you knew when you were getting close to a village. But when we would come to a village, the upper officers or what have you, they had all the plans, and they might decide to move everybody out of the village, and we would stay in the village and go through all the bunkers.
See who was there.
And see who was there and find what they could find, all the weapons and what have you. But the North Vietnamese Army was a professional army. They had uniforms and they knew what they were doing. And the South Vietnamese Army, who we fought with against the North Vietnamese Army, were just a ragtag bunch. They were good fighters. One of them you could trust. But hell, they'd fight beside you in the daytime and against you at night.
Would they?
What was that relationship like?
Well, it was better with the Army, I think, where they were in the cities, you know.
Yeah.
And what have you with the and Paul with them. We didn't have as many with us.
Okay.
And you really didn't. We didn't have any trust.
Okay.
Per se.
So they why would they? I've heard that before. Why would they fight with you during the day and then against you during the night? What was the point of them fighting with you and then against you?
Well, small town politics, you know.
So the North Vietnamese would come in and then bribe them or say, "Hey."
Well, what it was probably just go down to the survival.
Yeah. What do they have to do to stay alive?
You know, whatever they had to do.
Yeah.
And man, they were extremely good soldiers because they had very little to fight with, but it seemed like they feared nothing.
Yeah.
And but it was like when we got there was a big change between the time that I got there and the time that I left. Like when I got there, they were still dropping napalm. You know, our jets would go over and drop that napalm, and my Lord,
what's napalm?
Napalm is a mixture of I don't know what the sticking element was. It was almost like axle grease inside a bomb.
It's fire.
And
it would just burn off.
It would ignite and it would stick to
whatever it hit.
And you could see, well, when I was there, the kids, the Vietnamese kids and the adults, that stuff would hit them and stick to them, and it wouldn't heal. It would just, big sores.
So you'd go into these villages and they'd all be just.
Well, they'd have those sores all over them and the kids and everything. And we were, we were Marines, and we've like to always put on the tough persona, but we had soft places in our hearts for the kids and the people in the villages that we met were mostly the older people.
Were they just kind of caught up in it? I mean,
well, yeah, they were. All they were basically was just farmers and fishermen.
Yeah.
And they had told me when I got there that the average Vietnamese male was never, over 200 miles from home in his lifetime. And the total income that they had would be comparable to $200 in American money at that time.
Hey, Chubbies, when was the last time you had somebody take a look at your life insurance? It's something that nobody likes to talk about. But one thing I know about Pudge is he's coming to your funeral. You might as well have him show up with a check and take care of those loved ones. That's the time when they need it the most. He's writing it every day. Come have that conversation with him and get it done. And by the way, if you own a business and you haven't let Pudge quote your commercial insurance, you're making a mistake. Let him check it out. Make sure you got proper coverage for the best value on the market. Gillum Insurance for all your insurance needs. 740-395-0190.
Lifetime income?
Lifetime income.
Wow.
And you didn't really see any people like us that are healthy. I guess that's what you'd call us, healthy.
Yeah.
They were all
skin and bones.
Well, not so much skin and bone. They were muscle and bone.
Yeah.
Everything was muscle.
They probably had a lot of food, though. They grew a lot of food. They had good food.
Yeah, unless they were trading it for something. In the villages, they would make their cots out of wood. Their houses were made out of grass, sod and grass. So their house didn't cost them anything.
Yeah.
And
they're living in dirt, though.
Well, but
so that's the type of places that you had to go in and go through, though, right? Like
they probably didn't have as far as cooking utensils. Some of them, my entire family might not have 2 or 3 pots, and they ate with chopsticks or just wooden sticks or a spoon they had whittled out.
Yeah,
they were really poor.
Yeah,
and they never ate any meat other than fish.
I was going to ask you, what kind of wildlife did you see in the jungle?
Well, I've got a big story for that. Excuse me. We were on a observation post, and I say an observation post. It was the highest hill, or if you wanted to call them a hill, I call them a small mountain. But we would have maybe they call them FO, a forward observer, for the Navy. And we had ships out in the water all the time. And he would call in naval gunfire. If there was a hot spot, the naval FO would call in naval gunfire. And then we would have artillery people there, and they would be calling in the artillery from different places. But they would take a platoon, which was about, it might be 9 or 10, not a platoon, but a squad up there to protect them. We would live there for like maybe 20 days. And I was on guard duty one night, or watch. We call it watch. And I heard something. And you're right on the top of this mountain. So if you hear something,
get ready.
Yeah, there was gravel falling back down the hill. And so I got a little wild and kept getting closer. So I threw a hand grenade out. And whatever it was, I hit it. Or the grenade hit it, rather. And it kept coming closer. And it was moaning and groaning. And I actually thought it was a man. And I started, you had, besides regular grenades, you had illumination grenades. So I threw an illumination grenade out. And it lit up the whole area. But I had everybody awake by then. And I was glad for the company. And, you know, they all come running and everything and what have you. And I think I threw out another grenade and it blowed the concertina wire all over us. And what have you. But things quieted down after a while. And so a guy relieved me on the post that I was on, and I went to sleep. And when it got daylight, he came and got me, and he said, "Come out here and look at what you killed." And I had killed about a 350-pound black bear. Well, then the problem occurred to us.
They knew your spot.
What the hell was we going to do with the bear?
Yeah.
And you can't leave anything in the sun, you know. So, being the military, you know, and they had an answer for everything, they flew in helicopter loads of what they called Bangalore torpedoes. And they were a 2-inch pipe. I think they were like 10 foot long, and they were full of the old black TNT, and they used them to clear tree lines. So they took that bear and took these Bangalore torpedoes and laid against it, and took detonation cord, which was C4 blasting cord, and wrapped him all up good.
It blew him to pieces.
And blew him. So there went my claws and all these teeth I was going to have.
For souvenirs.
Yeah.
And what have you. But there was Bengal tigers. And actually they had a report in one of the Leatherneck newspaper over there about a Bengal tiger coming in dragging the guy off his hooch out in the jungle.
Really?
And
did you ever see one? Did you ever see a Bengal tiger out there?
No, not in the jungle. They had a lot of monkeys, hell of a lot of monkeys.
Snakes?
Absolutely, snakes. I don't like snakes yet.
Yeah.
And it was when you were in the jungle, there was you had food and your water, and you had to save the water to brush your teeth, and what have you. And there was no showers. If you were there 20 days,
No shower.
you could get out of your britches and they'd still be standing up.
Yeah. Boy, I bet it felt good to get in the showers when you'd get back on the ship after one of those.
But no hot meals,
Yeah.
no pop, no beer.
Cigarettes. What'd you do about tobacco?
Well, the old sea rations left over from Korea had little packs of cigarettes in them. Each meal had 4 cigarettes in a little pack.
That's what they did. Because you always see those guys smoking. You're like, man,
yeah.
how are they packing all them cigarettes to the jungle?
Oh, we'd
like
always take a carton with us. Each guy'd take him a carton. You'd take a carton of cigarettes and a 1 pound stick of C4, plastic explosive. And we would take that plastic explosive and somewhere along the line, somebody had figured out how to do this before I got there. And you would take and pinch off some of that off the 2 pound or pound stick. And it was like silly putty. And you would roll it up into a little ball in your fingers. And then you would make a little tip coming off of it. And you'd made you a little stove out of another C ration can, just air holes and what have you. And you would take the 1 C ration can and set it on that little stove thing, and you'd put that C4 plastic explosive in there, and you would light that, and it would just go, psh, and your water would be boiling.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how you heated your meals.
How many tours did you do there?
Thankfully, I only did one.
And that's that. What is a tour? Was that 1 year, or how does that?
When I got there, the tour for Marines was 13 months.
Okay.
And the Navy and the Air Force and the Army was doing 12 months. And somebody figured out that wasn't quite right. So while I was there, I think I had about a month left. And Congress passed a bill that they had to rotate the Marines every 12 months, as well as the other branches of service. And when that, I didn't have that a month. I was probably down to about a week, because when that come over the radio that they'd passed that bill, there was about 3 of us out in the bush, and they come over the radio and told them to get us to headquarters that night. They didn't want us in the bush another night.
And you were like, all right.
What was that feeling like when you got on a plane or helicopter to get out of there?
Well, we went to our headquarters right in the bush too. So the next day they put us on trucks and we got shot. Got into an ambush on the way to Marble Mountain, and which was a big, huge compound. They called it Monkey Mountain, because the damn monkeys at night would throw rocks all night.
Really?
Absolutely. Rock apes is what they call them. They throw damn rocks all night. But it was great.
Oh, I mean, I
You were ready
can't
to come
imagine
home.
the feeling.
Yeah.
You was done.
Well, and I got a little story about that.
Uh-huh.
But when we did leave Vietnam, they took us to Okinawa again, back to Okinawa. And they took about a week for us to get cleaned up and get our uniforms on, and little downtime and what have you. And then when it came time to put you, they gave you your flight and everything. And so I was sitting there ready to get on the plane to fly back to the United States. And some officer came in and wanted on that plane, and they were privileged. They got whatever they want. So who do you think they bumped?
Oh.
We got you.
So they, probably because my name started with a W.
Yeah.
So they bumped me off the plane, and I had to stay there another 2 days to get another flight in.
Then you fly back to California.
We flew, actually flew nonstop to, I think it was Lakeland, California, and refueled, and then flew to El Toro, California. And it was, well, I'd left there on December the 5th, and it was heading toward Christmas. And
Of the following year?
Yeah, of 69. And I was wanting to get home for Christmas. And man, there was so many soldiers coming back during that time period, and if you were military, you had to fly standby because you couldn't afford, you didn't have the money.
Yeah, so you would fly commercial home then, right?
Yeah.
Once you got to.
But see, when we were in Vietnam, we made $200 a month. And then because we were in a combat zone or in combat, they gave us combat pay. It was another $78 a month. So $278, and if you played any cards or bought any cigarettes,
Wasn't a whole lot in the kitty there.
no. And most guys had sent their money home to their parents anyway, because,
Right.
during that time there wasn't any mom and dad, and the kids lived off what I sent.
Yeah.
So, but the money was a little scarce, but, and then you had to sleep in airports to get from one point to the next, and whatever.
You're basically thumbing through the air back home, basically.
Yeah, how long did it take you to get back? What'd you fly back to, Columbus or where?
Well, I finally made it into Cincinnati,
Okay.
and I got a Greyhound bus ticket out of. That's when Greyhound run out to Jackson, and I rode the bus to. I think I rode the bus to Chillicothe, and I had a 4-hour layover. And I said, "To hell with that." And I threw my sea bag over my shoulder and walked out to the highway and stuck my thumb out and hitchhiked. I did a lot of that.
Yeah.
And caught a ride to Jackson and went
Hitchhiked home.
Yeah.
Did they know you was coming home, or did you just show up at the door?
No, they actually didn't. Well, they knew I was coming home. They didn't know when you'd get there. And I was walking down the street in Jackson and running into my sister. And she was in town with Dad.
Yeah.
And we had an old pickup. And
They throwed you in the truck.
yeah.
Boy, it had to be a good feeling, though, walking back in the house, wasn't it? I mean,
It was a good feeling, but it was like you were lost. You were going back into another world.
Explain that to me a little bit. I mean, you hear a lot of guys talk about it.
It was you didn't, you were going from a place where you were, on duty 24 hours a day or aware of your surroundings. And you went home to where that you didn't have to worry about anything, supposedly.
Yeah.
And the adjustment just wasn't that easy to make.
Yeah.
how long did it take you to decompress?
Oh, about 30 years.
I mean, that's what. I mean, it was.
Yeah, you might admit that you're not fully decompressed from that.
Well, I did spend a night in the Jackson jail.
Did you?
Yeah.
That don't surprise me how you, Ronnie. I mean,
Just one?
Yeah. I hope they never diagnose you terminal, because there's people are gonna get hurt.
There's a list.
There's a list.
I always just count everything. It's a life lesson.
Yeah, I know you
And,
do. I know. Hey guys, huge thanks out there to everybody down at Geiger Brothers Construction. Those guys as a whole unit have just been wonderful for the Chubbies. We appreciate each and every one of you hardworking people out there that listens to us. And thank you, Geiger Brothers Construction, for all your project needs. Give those guys a call, 740-286-0800.
I love it. But I have, since coming home, if you got a lot of good people, a good support base around you and family, and when I came back, there was no work.
Yeah.
So.
That'd have been in 69, 70?
Well, I went ahead and did 4 years in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
You just were stateside
I
after
was
that?
home for leave, and then I went back to California, to El Toro, California, and as we came home in Okinawa, they interviewed a bunch of us for presidential security for Nixon.
Okay.
And they changed my orders and sent me back there for the presidential security assignment. And Nixon's home was in San Clemente, California. And when he wasn't in Washington, when he would go home, we had Marine detachments that would go down and help guard his home. And then we would guard Air Force One there at El Toro Air Station. It was a Marine Air Station.
Yeah.
And I did that when we weren't on a presidential detail, we were military police. And I don't know, I did that probably for almost 2 years. And then I went to a police canine academy, and I was a marijuana detector dog handler.
Was you really?
And worked criminal investigation and drugs.
Huh.
And I've had a colorful.
Oh, yeah. Not at all.
Yeah.
So what year was it by the time you made it back home?
I got out in 72.
Okay.
June of 72. And came back home. And like I say, there was no jobs to be had around here. And I went to college. And just hit and miss. And I finally got in a union apprenticeship.
Yep.
And retired after about 30-some years with them.
Yep.
And now I'm just
Retired, living a good life.
piddling around.
Yeah. Not bored.
Do what I want.
Yeah, you do what you want now.
Yeah.
How long you been retired?
2008.
2008. So you've been a minute here. You've been
Yeah.
15 years almost.
Yeah, but retiring at 2008, and then you get to my age now, and your male life expectancy's I'm about to head into that pretty hard.
You're still kicking pretty good, though. You're still kicking pretty good. You just quit riding horses on us here not too long ago. That was one of my favorite trips. Remember me and you and Kevin, Troy, and Eddie, and Dad, and Kenny, and all those, Ted. We all went down to Tennessee that year.
Oh, yeah.
That was in 14. Your picture's in the front of the office.
I've got a lot of photos where we were down the Rocky Mountains there, and what have you. Yeah, it was good times, and of course the football games with Chad.
Yeah, sideliners. You were back in part of them old days, weren't you?
Ronnie and I worked the bingo game.
That's what I thought.
Remember?
Worked the bingo games, and we worked the Pee Wee football for.
You guys were a start. That's what. Whenever we first brought your name up.
Gosh, I don't know how many years we worked that, but.
Well, from its conception.
Yeah.
I didn't know that much about football, but I knew how to make hot dogs.
Well, you guys were a part of the beginning of what turned out to be just a powerhouse program.
Yeah.
I mean, you and Ted and Eddie and Jim Cusick and Humphreys and Jeff Malone's dad, Jim Malone, and Mark Riegel. And
that program was, I went to the first meeting at the high school.
Yeah.
And Jim Humphreys, Jim's sons would be Dave and George played in a Pee Wee program, I think, in Columbus.
Yeah.
And Jim had what he had learned about the administrative end of it, and he had a meeting, and we went to that. Charlene and I went to the meeting there at the high school, and we got involved from the very start. And like I say, we were good at making hot dogs, and then I helped with the uniforms and raised money, and but it turned into a great program.
It still is.
Somebody was telling me the other day I think it was Doc Owens. He was with us for a lot of years, and he was actually telling me that that one year we had 122 or 120 some boys in the football program, and we had 60 some little cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Because they had it was like a spinoff from the boys football program.
I don't know what it's at now.
Well, I mean, last year we had almost 150 kids involved.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a second grade team last year.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah. It was, I don't know about, we retired out of it. Jim died, and Cusick
moved on. He moved away.
Well, he moved on. He passed on, and
Craig listens.
And what have you. And it was a great program, and we didn't have any conflicts. You know,
No drama.
we were lucky. We had enough local talent that had played football to head up our coaching process. And those of us that didn't know anything about football, like I said, would help with the equipment. And, but our kids, from the very start, if memory serves me correct, they only had to pay for their insurance, which was $10, and we furnished the helmets and the other stuff. Now, if they couldn't afford a pair of shoes, we'd buy them for them. And what have you, man, we'd push.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, the way that thing started, and then like I say, not even only the Pee Wee, but I mean the Sideliners Club itself, what it did for Jackson football,
Unbelievable.
I mean, and you know, man, you guys, that core group. I mean, how many bingo games did you work?
Oh yeah,
I mean, every Thursday night, man. I mean.
And, of course, we were given the varsity. I think we was given the varsity, or not, maybe not the varsity, but the high school program. I think we were giving them somewhere around $50,000.
Oh my
a year.
goodness, yes.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
And,
my God, I had shirts and I mean, just
well, and I mean, just like all of a sudden, Jackson had the best equipment available.
yeah.
Then, like, if you needed something for the practice field, like a new sled or
anything, they'd go to them.
And I mean, hey, bud.
Remember that Manure Madness you guys would
the
do?
radios. And,
Oh yeah.
equipment.
I mean, really, the thing is, man, at Jackson, since the Sideliners came about like that, if you're the coach at Jackson, you got everything but an excuse.
Yeah. yeah.
I actually still, they send me a letter each year, and I send my dues in to the people that are running the program. I haven't really kept up with it because I've,
You don't have any ties to
Well,
it.
you
get
put
old,
your time in, man.
when you get old and you've got your kids and they're Jared and
Your family's in Florida.
granddaughters in Florida, and Rachel
Shout out, Jared.
and the girls are in
Where are they?
Delaware.
Delaware, yeah.
Worthington.
And
Rachel, your age?
You're graduated a year behind me, but yeah, real close. Yeah.
but they're doing great. Rachel's Maggie, the oldest girl's. She just finished her sophomore year there at Miami.
Oh, that's awesome. In
She's
college.
a brain.
How old's Jared's now?
Jared's is 4.
4.
Yeah.
He got a late start. Old Jared got a late start there.
Yeah.
They're actually going to be in town.
Are they?
Thursday.
Oh, I'd
Well,
like to.
I say Thursday. They're going to the camper, meeting us at the camper
Oh, okay.
Thursday.
I'd like to see Jared. I haven't
And,
seen him for years. I've talked to him.
Friday, I think we may go to Henderson's for the. They've got a barrel race down there, and the little girl loves horses.
okay.
So, get her out to Eddie's and let her ride, and
Okay.
then take her to the
Holler at me if you got daddies.
barrel race. Well,
like to see
we'll
him.
be out there sometime Friday afternoon, I think.
Next week.
If it doesn't rain.
Next week,
next
26.
Friday.
26.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to see Jared. I'll run out there and say hi.
Whatever, but Jared's on top of his game.
He sent us a bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that bottle. That we went ahead and polished that off.
That was awful nice.
Yeah, we thank you, Jared. Chad and I went ahead and polished that off for you.
I know a guy that's got another.
I figured you did. Yeah. Oh, Dad takes care of us, Jared.
I always had two of everything.
Yeah. Well, buddy, I really appreciate that story, man.
Yes.
I tell you, I've talked to you a lot about it. I mean, me and you've become real good friends, man. I appreciate that story, and
There's a lot I couldn't.
I know you was worried about, but I mean, you kept it
Thanks
there.
for sharing, though, man.
Hell, me and Ronnie, we've become business partners.
Well, that's what I heard.
Well, not now, but we were. I mean, hell, we've done it all together here in the last couple of years. You know,
Money's good.
yeah, money was good, wasn't it, Ronnie?
Yeah.
Naked.
naked, and and now does Ronnie pay you with C rations?
Yeah, well, he didn't pay me. We trade.
Okay, yeah.
But no, I appreciate the hell out of that
that's
story,
awesome.
Ronnie.
Yeah.
Anytime you will come back and tell us
we'd
some
love-
more,
yeah.
you do it again. I told him, I said, I think his grandkids and his kids would appreciate
Oh, heck
this,
yeah.
being
love
on
hearing
recording and stuff. I mean,
absolutely.
have you talked to Jared much about this type of stuff? I don't know Rachel's was. I know Jared. That's why I referenced Jared. But
You can talk some. You sort of talk around
what you want to talk about?
what you want to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
You and your dad are close, but how close can you really get? I mean,
Yeah, there's probably a lot of stuff about my dad I don't know.
Well,
Same
it's
with
probably
you, Chad.
and it's probably not the kind of thing that you really want to talk about all the time,
Well,
right? I mean,
and certain things went on, that shouldn't be talked about,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
From all I took out of that experience, I didn't want Jared to go into the service.
Yeah.
It just, better opportunities for him
Yeah.
and what have you. But I was hoping Rachel's Maggie would, that new Space Force.
There you go.
I told her, I said, my gosh, if you got in on the bottom ground level of that, the opportunities would be enormous.
Yeah.
And but she's going to be a architect.
My brother-in-law's the E9
And
in
really,
the Air Force. Yeah. Yeah, he's probably, he's probably 15 or 16 years in now.
yeah,
He's got his degree. I don't know how all that works, but he's really high up in the military.
well, I don't, E9, you can probably only go to about a E12
Something like that. Yeah, he's
in the E's, and then
Yeah.
you go into the warrant officer and the,
he's in. I don't know what all I don't know how all that works, but then my wife's uncle, he got to be like an E6 or 7, and he did 20 years in Japan. So I'm pretty familiar with the enlisted process, but the systems that they seem to have in place now, it's not. I mean, it's just a totally different situation than whenever you were in there.
well, they're making enough money to, live a comfortable
Absolutely,
life.
absolutely. Yeah, it's more of a career now than it is a
Live this middle income level that we're all on, starving. Starving to
they're not.
death.
I mean, I don't mean this as disrespect. They're not. Fighting in the bush for $278.
Yeah. That was unbelievable. But at the time, that was we used M16 rounds for quarters and 45 rounds for dollars when we played cards.
Yep.
And we would count up, and each person would keep a book about Chad owes me, I owe Pudge,
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I tell you.
I don't think anybody ever really cared who paid what, but most time,
Bragging rights.
There's a game going.
yeah. But when you're downtime, you would get to sit around, and that's how we played.
Yeah.
They had a game called Back Alley.
Yeah.
It was something like bridge. and we'd play it. Guys, I think I'm out of here.
All right.
We
well,
really appreciate it.
All right. Well, hey, Chubbies, hey, like and subscribe. Anything else we got to tell them coming up?
Hey, hit that subscribe button.
Yeah,
we got a lot of people listening that aren't subscribed.
We noticed 83% of the people, 83.6% of the people that listen to us aren't subscribed. So
Do you guys make money off this?
Oh, well, haven't you?
Is there
we're rich.
Yeah.
We're getting rich off this.
What do you call that if you rerun it? What is that word they use? Like if they show a movie twice?
Royalties?
Royalties? Oh, yeah. You'll get, we'll kick, if we get $1 million off
we'll
of this.
Cut you right in there.
If they make a movie about this podcast, you're right in there. Yeah. So hit that subscribe button. Like I said, 83% of the people aren't subscribed. But hey, we're just glad you're listening. By this time, Lusk is out. We got the next one coming up. We got Kevin Baker.
Yeah,
so
it'll be fun. Got a lot of good guests coming up.
Yes, we got full schedule coming up.
Stay tuned. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. So see you, Chubby. See you.